Next up in the 2024 Heat Check series is Kansas guard Kevin McCullar, a fifth-year senior who spent his first 3 collegiate seasons with Texas Tech before becoming a Jayhawk juggernaut this year. McCullar has long been mentioned among the best defenders in college basketball over the last few seasons, but has seen a usage jump and subsequent stats boost this season for Kansas, making him a really interesting draft study. He stands at 6'6", 212 pounds with a 6'9" wingspan, and will undoubtedly be one of the oldest players in the 2024 draft at 23 years old on draft night. He's currently averaging 20 points, 4.7 assists, and 6.3 rebounds per game on 48, 36, 82 shooting splits. Here's how Heat Check works. I'm going to identify one draft prospect and grade them on what I believe to be the most generally important skills and aspects of their game: athleticism, scoring, defense, passing and playmaking, and overall feel for the game. After those 5, I'll grade one additional skill relative to that prospect that I think is going to have the biggest effect on their stock. That will be deemed the swing skill. Each skill will be graded on the Heat Check chart, with ranges from freezing all the way to scorching. When that's all said and done, I'll divvy out one final overall score. Let's start with athleticism. McCullar would likely be described as a plus athlete by most, rounding out to a good solid average in the NBA. He's able to use his verticality, burst, and adept movement skills to create advantages on both ends of the floor with relative consistency. He's not a live above the rim type guy, but certainly has enough juice in the tank to get himself easier slashing or transition buckets. His movement skills are elite, especially laterally. He's extremely coordinated and smooth when shuffling side to side, as most stingy perimeter defenders are. He won't stick out for the wrong reasons in this department, thus earning himself a warm grade. I've given McCullar a warm grade for his scoring as well. There's a ton of context surrounding both McCullar's current and career numbers. I'm going to use a mix of these numbers in regards to his NBA potential. If we based it strictly off this season, obviously his best ever, he'd look like a top 5 pick. McCullar can score the basketball in a variety of ways. He's not necessarily an on-ball savant, but it's important to note that he's capable of a few things. As we'll talk about in a bit, with his solid handle, he can initiate offense. He can be a threat in the pick and roll, and rarely he can be used in isolation. Where he thrives, though, is with his off-ball onslaught, which is much more practical and useful for his archetype in the NBA. The vast majority of his points have come in transition, spotting up, and cutting. Firstly, he's a real transition threat. He's sneaky quick, knows when to get up and go, and can pick teams apart even when they're back on defense. He's an adept cutter and always has been, attacking the gaps in the defense and using his bulky frame, long arms, and fine touch to finish at the rim, 62% there this season. In terms of play types per synergy, McCullar ranks excellent as a cutter, spotting up, and coming off screens this season. Again, a very important distinction. He also ranks very good posting up and in transition. We'll cover his shooting more in depth in a later section, but it's far and away going to affect his stock the most, with 3-and-D players being a commodity. For now, we'll just say he's been good this season, just shy of 37% from 3 on 4.2 attempts per game. There's a lot to digest regarding McCullar's offense. Just know, like most players, there's some great, good, and bad, but I think there's easy pathways towards NBA success on the offensive end, with him being a high IQ player, having that plus athleticism, and a lot of practical ways of getting to the hoop and knocking down shots. McCullar's overall draft selling point is going to be his defense, which is versatile, effortless, positionally fluid, and it's earned him a scorching grade. Let's just start with the counting stats: 1.4 steals and half a block per game this season, which are great but don't tell the full story. His size makes him a real handful, be it on or off ball, and his athleticism pairs well with decent shot block timing. He's extremely versatile positionally, fast enough to stick with most guards, and strong enough to size up and take on some really big assignments, power forwards, and even small ball centers. Starting with his on-ball defense, he can be flat out stifling. He's elite, near 1 of 1 in isolation matchups. He takes long strides, flips his hips with ease, has extremely active hands and twitchy footwork, and if you have a loose handle, there's a good chance he's going to take advantage. McCullar is a really nice recovery defender. He sticks with plays and doesn't disengage where others would normally feel out of it. A decent chunk of his steals are legit on-ball rips, usually in isolation, which a lot of teams are going to prefer to off-ball gambling. Off-ball though, McCullar has some really impeccable awareness. He clearly takes a lot of pride in this area. He plays like a free safety, surveying the entire floor and helping/ball hawking whenever he feels he has a chance to make a play. I would challenge anyone who watches tape on him to find defensive possessions where he's not paying attention or is lulled to sleep. They are few and far between, trust me. Suffice to say, he'd be a real weapon for NBA teams to throw out in a variety of circumstances. Point of attack, shadowing a star, switch-heavy schemes. He's a great defender. On to McCullar's passing and playmaking, where he's not necessarily an exploratory trailblazer, but again is a real plus in this category, earning himself a warm grade. In his freshman season with Tech, he averaged less than 1 assist per game in 18 minutes. This season, he's boosted that to 4.7 assists in 35 minutes a game, boasting a near 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio in the process. That jump is obviously due to his much increased role with the Jayhawks this season, but it's still nice to know that those numbers can keep scale with opportunity. Again, there's not a ton of flash or pizzazz to his passing game, but he's able to make easy reads, push the pace, keep the ball moving, so on and so forth. Although he can initiate offense, it's a bit on the rails, post-entry passes, clean, sharp, extra passes to guys on the perimeter, some predetermined pick and roll stuff. There's nothing too bold outside of some keen transition reads, but that's exactly what NBA teams are going to need in a 3-and-D adjacent player like McCullar. His pure playmaking leaves a bit to be desired, but that's just not going to be his forte now or in the future. He's not going to be operating with the ball in his hands as much as this season at Kansas, but again, his tape in these latter Kansas years should only make teams more secure in his high floor. He's a good passer and should be graded as such. On McCullar's overall feel for the game, I'm probably smack dab between warm and hot, but ultimately landed on warm, really due to him being a 5th-year player and a future 23-year-old draftee. While I do think McCullar now has a decent feel for the game of basketball, it feels a little more learned than it should, and it took him a little longer than his peers to really find comfortability at the college level, and I think that could rear its head some in the NBA too. As we talked about, on defensive end, he's got very natural feel on the perimeter and in doing the little things, no worries there at all. Offensively, again, I think there's a little more scheme than people think. Pick and roll prowess is great, some initiation is great, but I personally am reserved in calling him a high feel offensive player. Regardless, he'll fit right in on both ends in the NBA, not at all something to worry about regarding McCullar. He's a perfect fit in a variety of NBA schemes and systems if he can do one thing. And let's talk about that one thing, Kevin McCullar's swing skill, shooting. Let's just get the gross stuff out of the way. He's a career 31% three-point shooter on limited sample, 2.6 attempts per game for his career. That's including a massive boost in percent and volume from his final season with Kansas. The mechanics of his shooting form are not something that's necessarily going to excite professionals. He's got a slow, wind-up form, and while he generates solid lift on the ball, his hand placement is often inconsistent and really downright pretty bad. And even worse, shooting feels massive to him getting legitimate NBA minutes. There's just not too many 6'6"-ish guys without a jump shot seeing run, especially come April. And even as good as everything else is, McCullar could join that club without sustained success. But there is good news. McCullar has been great shooting the ball this season. Per synergy, he ranks excellent on all catch and shoot shots, very good on jumpers and guarded catch and shoot shots, and only below average on dribble jumpers, which again are not going to be common in his shot diet. So there has been real tangible improvement, albeit all at once and in a short span, but I think that tracks given what I've read about McCullar's work ethic and dedication to his craft, which seems sky high. This season, he's looked really confident shooting and has looked great coming off screens. Even more, re-simplifying things in the spaced out NBA could put more work in on his percentages. There's a real chance his early Texas Tech years were hindered by spacing issues. One last potential indicator of touch could be his free throw numbers, which at their lowest point was 70%, and have blossomed to a whopping 82% this season. At the end of the day, I think it's going to be fairly dependent on the looks you can give him. McCullar could be well worth the pick for a more surgical NBA team that's dedicated to spacing the floor and only taking the highest percentage shots. But teams thrusting him into ISO-heavy, superstar-centric teams and expecting him to hit tougher shots with consistency are probably knocking on the wrong door. The grade. I've given Kevin McCullar an overall grade of 7.5, which in the 2024 NBA draft cycle is likely going to land him as a fringe lottery to mid-first selection. There's a ton of factors that go into that range, starting with the fact this draft is indeed lighter on top talent. I personally believe McCullar, with connective offense, improving shooting, and elite versatile defense, can become a long-time rotational NBA player. And in a class where gambling on young, unproven talent could be scary, I really value what McCullar brings to the table, especially for win-now teams. He's older, there's shooting concerns, and that's pretty much where the main negatives end with him. From what I've gathered, he's a great locker room guy, hard worker, focused on getting better, and he's a plus in a variety of areas: athleticism, interior scoring, defense as a whole, passing, so on and so forth. I think there's something to be said for his production jump this season, and I really understand spending a high pick on him in the upcoming draft for teams that need an infusion of winning qualities. That is it for this one. Let me know what you think of Kevin McCullar, what you grade him, where you draft him, drop you want to see in the next heat check. We'll see you later.